It was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Can't be like
forward.
a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have
Corrupt
sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
Hi, my name is Luigi Nicholas. I am a final year student at Stellenbosch University.
Hi, my name's Aidan Parrott. I'm a journalism student at Stellenbosch University.
Hi, my name is Anthony Martin Andrews. I'm a law student at Stellenbosch University.
Hi, I'm Claire Kelly. I'm not a student at Stellenbosch University. I am a staff member and I work in the transformation office.
Has real change occurred? Can we say that we've gotten to a point? Because, I mean, transformation implies a movement from one point to another. So a tangible movement, one that we can all realize has happened. Or are we just inundated with policies that reflect where we're not? These are the questions we ask ourselves, especially in times of the language policy, times of racial discrimination that's still so palpable here at Stellenbosch University. But have we made that effective progress?
I have seen some form of transformation. When I came, I didn't get the recruitment bursary because they thought I was white.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then when I came into res, they paired me up with a white roommate. It was back in the time where they paid you up according to your race. And then
They've stopped doing that.
they stopped doing that now. Yes.
That is progress.
No, they stopped doing that now. But when I started, I was paired with a white roommate, and then my first week they asked me to change. And so I was paired with a coloured roommate.
Well, those of us who joined Stellenbosch for the university for the first time do spend our first 3 months with our jaws on the ground going,
This happens.
but I think that's important. So there is a bit of there's an inward lookingness.
I mean, in my instance, I had very interesting experience when I went to residence. So I came here in my first year, and normally one would presume you shower by yourself, right?
Yeah. What?
I would presume that would be the point of departure. You shower by yourself alone. That's not the case. In the residence that I was in, there are communal showers. Fairly interesting point to navigate in the context of gender as an expression and not a social construct. It becomes a platform for fairly divisive behavior, exhibitions of toxic masculinity in my case.
My grandfather worked at the Stellenbosch University Botanical Gardens for 25 years. I love walking down Reinefeld Street, and he would have walked down there as well. He lived in 110 and he was forcefully removed as part of the Group Areas Act and taken to Cluttersville, where he died recently. So I always ask myself, is the life that I'm living as a colored person in Stellenbosch different from the life that my grandfather and my father lived? My father wouldn't have been able to study here. He had to go to UWC. If my grandfather hadn't worked at Stellenbosch, my father wouldn't have had that experience. But then there was a story 2 years ago and a similar one recently about a racial slur against colored people being used at a nightclub here in Stellenbosch. And I couldn't help think, my father would have experienced the same thing. He worked at a restaurant here and they, were attacked and bullied. And the same racial slur was used against them. So for me, the question is always, is the experience of Stellenbosch and Stellenbosch University the same or different for me as a colored person in 2019 as it would have been for my dad and his generation in 89 or in the late 70s? Because that's how we really experience transformation when it happens.
Transformation, decolonization, whatever we want to call it, I'll call it transformation. Building in accountability structures into the system itself. In many ways, that is what is, from a structural point of view, what is missing kind of in the institution. So even when, and I'm going to get a bit technical here, when faculties draw up their plan for the year, how are they committing to transformation?
Indeed.
And how are they being held account for those held to account for those commitments.
You begged a very interesting question in comparing Stellenbosch University today, a 100-year-old institution, and Stellenbosch University perhaps 25 years ago. If I'm still facing a racial slur at the club, if I'm still discriminated against in a single-sex residence because of perhaps my sexuality, my sexual orientation, my creed, my culture, my race, what is the policy worth if not implemented well?
Absolutely.
So policy that does not find life is not even worth the paper it's written on.
That's why people don't want to come to Stellenbosch. That's why people think it's still a racist town. It's because they're not seeing how people are kept accountable. People aren't being punished for doing bad deeds. People aren't being punished for being racist or for plagiarizing and for making comments that are inappropriate. And I think that's where the university needs to work on, is how they actually, I don't want to say punish because it's not school, but how they reprimand.
punishment in fancy speak.
Well,
Accountability.
Hold account-
how they
We call
keep
it
people
accountability.
accountable. Because we're adults, like you can say accountable now.
Yes, not punishment.
Yes, how they keep people accountable for their actions. And that's the struggle, because if you don't keep people accountable, someone else will do the same thing, and then they'll think nothing wrong of it. So, yeah, I think from that point, like, and it's not just students that do it, it's also staff members, it's leaders, it's lecturers, it's residence heads, it's admin people. And when you're coming from a different background and someone treats you this way, then you're not going to want to stay in a town. You're not going to want to go to class because your lecturer is racist. You're not going to want to go to class because the person sitting next to you doesn't feel comfortable because you have a different race.
This touches on a very important point, that we can have policy implementations and we can have bursaries and we can try to attract people, but when we're here, what is the quality of our lives? Because that explains the amount of people who don't make the academic standards every year, and the large dropout rates in our first years, the large dropout rates in general, because the academic project is an integrated one. Your race comes into question, your socioeconomic stance comes into question. It's not just about burying your head in the books. That's if I can afford the book.
Yes, exactly, in the first place.
From my race experience alone, I can actually say it has transformed in a way. Like, they're not allowed to pay you up according to your race. Some people still get away with complaining if they paid up with someone with a different race. And I think that's where problem comes in with students not wanting to come to Stellenbosch.
Also, the whole talk about gender neutral bathrooms. Why not? And why should we have single-sex bathrooms? So all of these challenge our conceptions of things that people have taken as a given. And my fear is that the authority that be, if we do not have a conceptual consensus of concepts like gender and what they are, then it's going to filter down into practical measures, into palpable measures that sort of exhibit this problematic nature. I don't know if anybody else has had considerations where the concept, the flawed concept of certain integral parts like race, gender, language, culture have emanated into very practical manifestations of our lack of understanding of the concepts, where we exclude others on that basis.
Of course, like everywhere, some things have changed, but some things haven't. And part of what we're trying to figure out is what has and what hasn't. So I think at Stellenbosch, our greatest challenge is not in the policy area. Maybe there's a few policies we can tweak, but in the institutional culture.
Yes.
Because it's there that policy finds life or doesn't.
With issues like disability, with issues like racism, with institutional culture, with gender-based violence, the problem lies with those who hold the attitudes that perpetuate the problem.
And sit back and recline while
And
we
so
do the footwork.
With the kind of ghettoizing of this work, the issue is essentially that it shouldn't be like that. It should be the opposite way. There should be more pressure on those groups who hold the beliefs that are oppressing, to address why, like to self-reflect and say, what are we doing and what can we do differently, and are we actually losing something by trying something new? You know, there are black people at Stellenbosch now. The university hasn't been destroyed. The university is still going. There are successful students from
it
here.
is definitely flourishing.
We are here. Like so I mean, it's often, you know, There are successful theatre students coming from the HB Tom, well now the Adam Small
Indeed,
Theatre.
of colour.
Exactly. So there are students of color receiving awards from NASBARS or Media 24 now, and nothing is falling apart.
Yeah.
So essentially, if what do we stand to lose? What
Nothing.
Exactly.
Stellenbosch is, first of all, a university in a town, in a region,
Yes.
right? It's not like a Wits, which is in a city which is incredibly diverse. Even UCT, okay, UCT is also vertically located, but there's something about the insularity of the town of Stellenbosch.
Perhaps because we're surrounded by mountains.
Mountains
We feel like we're alone.
Yeah,
Yes.
and vineyards, which is a very particular historic
Seclusion, yes.
there's a historical relationship which is still largely in place within the kind of around the town, and so I think there is something of a myopia.
My grandmother worked at the hydro here as a nurse, and if we were to ask people here, Anthony or Luigi, they had their parents and grandparents had lives that were happening.
Yes.
Dignified
lives.
Dignified lives.
Yes.
While Prof. H.B. Tom or whoever was doing something here in Stellenbosch, and sometimes we forget that these histories were happening at the same time, and that even though there's one person who was celebrated or one group who was celebrated, that doesn't mean that the other people weren't playing an important role at exactly the same time.
Who gets to say that now we've reclaimed the space? Once this has happened, the space is reclaimed. It's always an interesting question to me.
It's the kind of depth of the intervention. You
It
mean?
is.
Yeah.
It is. And also in the language project, the transformation project, who is it targeted as? Who gets to validate my experience? Who gets to be the authority to say, okay, this is worthy to be put on a piece of paper and reflected? And in what way?
And that is the struggle.
That's been our struggle.
Who gets to define this thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to bring back to the whole institutional culture and how Stellenbosch needs to transform. But how can we transform as a university when we still have people in positions that were here more than like 30 years ago, who still have that mentality of the apartheid times? And so we're asking them to transform, but they don't understand what it is. So as a university structure, it can be difficult to transform when you still have people in positions that just don't want to transform.
There are very deep connections into different histories that this university has, and there are people who represent those histories, and it's a kind of about elevating and putting forward those voices and having those voices shape who Stellenbosch is. And I think that's what Stellenbosch is in at the moment, in a struggle for who does this university belong to? Who does this university belong to? Who gets to shape who and what this place is?
My dream is to being a space that's universally accessible.
My dream is to have my children not experience the same pain I've experienced.
My dream is to live in a society where human dignity is at the center of everything we do and are.
My dream is to contribute to a world and create a world that my children can thrive in, that they are safe in, and that they can be themselves in.
Yazi, you should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong. You should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong.